It's the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast with your hosts, the Wolf and Action Jackson, who are keeping rock alive by talking classic rock, hard rock, progressive rock, heavy metal, 80s music, early MTV, UK vs. US chart success, and much more. This is the home of classic album and live concert reviews and your place for interviews with artists and legends. You're rocking with the Wolf. Hey out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to episode number 199 of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast. Brought to you by me, your host, Mac B. the Wolf. And I will be joined, as always, by my partner in crime from the east coast of the US of A, Gary Action Jackson. And we appreciate everybody tuning in last week to our show on YouTube's The Unforgettable Fire, a transition album for them where they were trying out a new producer, namely Brian Eno and his right-hand man Daniel Lanois, and changing their sound a bit, trying not to just be the post-punk kids, trying to get a more European, more sophisticated, atmospheric sound, and boy did it work. But did that mean everybody liked it? Well, maybe not, but it really set them up for huge success with the Joshua Tree a few years later, and as it was turning 40, we thought we would review that one for you. But this week, on our 199th episode, and trust me, we're going to come up with something special for our 200th next week, so we want to make sure you stay subscribed and tuned in so you don't miss it. I think you're going to like it. If you're a fan of the show, if you've been listening for a while, I know you're going to like what we've got cooked up for you. But this week, on episode number 199, we review another album that's turning 40, not a UK band this time, and not one that we knew really well growing up either. Now, this is a band from Minneapolis called The Replacements. Kind of a punk band with a bunch of young kids who maybe had some tough times growing up, and they're taking it out in their music. But their 1984 offering, Let It Be, showed some growth, creating better songs with better melodies and more personal stuff than just punk I hate the world kind of stuff. And they actually attack some things like sexual ambiguity and confusion and things that you wouldn't hear normally in a pop or rock song. But punk is for the outsiders, not just the people who have a hard time at home, but people who are dealing with things that may be on the fringes of society, and society, for the most part, doesn't want to know or hear about it. But people are welcome at punk shows because they're different, and they tackle a lot of things in here. It's actually a very sophisticated record for a punk band, with Paul Westerberg, who would go on to do a lot of soundtrack work and have a decent solo career in the 90s, leading the way as the lead songwriter. And some are just straight-ahead punk songs, 2 chords and a cloud of dust. Some are more thoughtful and grown-up songs, dealing with emotions and the confusion of growing up in America in the 80s. And when Jackson showed me that it was turning 40, I knew the album a little bit. I said, you know what, that is a different one. That might not be a multi-platinum seller, but people ought to know The Replacements. And when we had Kieran Roy of October Drift on not too long ago, talking about his new album, which is out September 27th, Blame the Young, I mentioned that there were parts of his album that had a little taste of The Replacements in it. Now, Kieran doesn't know The Replacements, so hopefully, Kieran, you're listening to this one, and maybe you're discovering a little bit about this band that I think is pretty darn good. An often overlooked band in the history of American rock and roll. But first, we do have a little bit of business to take care of. As always, we like to mention we are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast Network, a family of over 100 shows. You can learn more at pantheonpodcast.com or follow on socials at PantheonPods. And we have to give a big shout out to our sponsor, rarevinyl.com, who is based in the UK, folks, but they have over 250,000 items in stock. And they have amazing stuff in there. Lots of vinyl, lots of first edition stuff that is hard to get in good condition. Lots of imports, point-of-sale posters and displays, singles, CDs, picture discs, whatever you are looking for, they probably have it. So go to rarevinyl.com and find some stuff that you love, treasures you've been looking for a long time, and then use code UGLY, and you can save 10% off your entire order. Not just one item, but one entire order. I saw someone go on there and buy 5 different Bon Jovi picture discs the other day. And they save 10% off all of them by using the code UGLY. Holidays are here before you know it, folks. And you can only use it once, but you can use it on one entire order. So visit rarevinyl.com, use the code UGLY to save 10%. Your record collection will thank you. Now back to The Replacements. I have to admit that I didn't really catch up with them until I was older. I'd heard Paul Westerberg's songs on some soundtracks in some movies in the 90s. And I thought, well, he has a pretty interesting voice. I had some friends like, oh yeah, man, I love those guys. Good punk stuff from the 80s. So eventually I went back and discovered him. And this album, Let It Be, really kind of jumped out at me as being pretty darn good. And same with their follow-up in 1985, Tim, kind of the golden age of the Replacements as a band. But they would have their ups and downs, they would have some issues, and we're going to talk about all of that here on the show. So let's get to it. We're talking the Replacements' Let It Be as it turns 40, here on The Wolf. When you mentioned in the start of the year, even before the start of the year, when we start to look up, okay, what are we going to look, which albums are we going to line up? Because we got to get a fair number of albums out. We know we're going to have some interviews. We know we're going to have some live concert reviews. We're going to have some ideas for shows. And then we're going to want to do some record reviews as they hit certain milestones. And when you said or showed me that the Replacements, Let It Be, was turning 40, like, that's not a very big album. It's not like it's a multi-platinum thing. It's not like it's something we listened to a lot. Certainly not in 1984 when it came out. Didn't even really know who the Replacements were then. But over time, I got to know them a little bit, and it was an album that I actually got to know pretty well in the 2000s during the heady days of Napster, when you could just say, hey, I've had friends tell me about this album, or, people have told me this is really good, or I've seen this on lists of, the best albums of whatever. So I think I'll download some of it and see what it's all about. But how did you come to get to know the Replacements, or did you ever?
So they were always the band that I had heard of, but I didn't know anybody that had copies of these records. But it was like, if you really like music, the Replacements. They're these guys. They don't follow the rules. They don't do it. They're just badass rock and roll guys. Okay, cool. Then how come I've never heard of them then if they're that cool? So I was watching, I don't even think I was watching the movie, but there was some movie that had, it was ending, and on the out, it had Bastards of Young.
Yes.
And I was like, hey, this is a pretty banging song. What is this? And it was at a time where I could IMDb it. It was like, that's the Replacements. I said, well, okay, I think I've waited long enough. I think I need to dive into this. And to me, it's the attitude, it's the sound. It's the fact that they just could never get off the ground, but it was their own fault, maybe, or that's just their
plan.
Attitude.
Even it's partly their fault, partly their idea not to, right?
And the thing that I love about this record is that it was produced on, what was this thing, Twin Tone Records.
Yeah.
And so it's not a major label. They could do whatever they wanted to. There was no corporate interference. This was just them being them. And it was, I think they wanted people to like their music, but they never wanted to play the corporate game. They never wanted to pander to anyone, including their own audience. So I just thought, you know what, let's give these guys a little love, because it's an interesting story. It's a heartbreaking story, especially down the road with the different members.
Yeah.
I think we need to shine a light on this.
Yeah, and once you brought it up and showed me its 40th, and the Let It Be album was one that I actually knew. I don't know all of their albums. I don't know all of their music by heart. And I think that I first kind of started to get into them a little bit in the late 80s when the original band was starting to break up a little bit. They were finally starting to get on like 120 minutes.
Even though I think their will, yes.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, and we'll talk about, they even have a song about it, how they make fun of people for being on MTV. Kind of like in 1984, Metallica was like, screw MTV, we'd never do that. By 1989, they're like, yes, let's make 6 videos.
Yeah.
But, I heard a little bit about him, and then Paul Westerberg, the lead singer and main songwriter, he, after they kind of broke up in the early 90s, he got onto a lot of soundtracks, including singles, which it wasn't for me. I was a little too young. It was like singles was to a certain generation of folks what the Breakfast Club was to us.
Yeah.
However, and while some people might have fit in both of those classes, like if you were 18 in 1985, by the time singles came out in 1992 and you were like 25, maybe it did ring to you. Maybe it did make sense to you. We were still in college, that didn't really ring to us because in 1985, I'm like 12. It took me a couple years before I saw Breakfast Club like on HBO. I'm like, This is the greatest movie in the history of the world.
Yeah.
But, people who were just a little bit older than us, I think singles really resonated with them. And then to me, the movie was like, yeah, it's okay. It's cool because it's got like Eddie Vedder and it's got like Chris Cornell in it and Alice in Chains. And it had, because it's a Cameron Crowe movie, you know, it's going to have cool bands in it.
Right.
And then, you know, and Paul Westerberg is on that soundtrack, you know, and, you know, it was that song, ha, 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 waiting for somebody. That was him. So I'm like, okay, well, let's go back. I love going back. There's nothing I love more than discovering an artist and then saying, oh, you mean he's got like 6 albums with this other band? Okay, well, let's go check it out, you know? Yeah. And you're the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing better than that, because if it's just one record, you can chew through that pretty easily. But to have 6 or 7 that you can go back to and listen, and then you can see the progression too of where they started and kind of where they ended up. And yeah, I remember hearing that again too, like you were saying, he's on the single soundtrack. Okay, it's not the Replacements, but it's Paul Westerberg. He was basically the guy behind the sound. He wrote most of the songs.
He's a lead singer.
I think he wrote all of the songs, but then he had help on some of them. So he was the architect of the sound. And yeah, it is fun to see where they came from and where they went. And then, yeah, if they were so great and they were so big, how come I've never heard of them? Well, they weren't really that big, but they were that great.
Yeah, yeah. Dyslexic Heart was a song off the Singles soundtrack that, I mean, it went to 4 on the U.S. alternative charts, and that's in 1992. So we're living together at that point, and we're not into punk, and we're not really into 80s alternative anymore. We're pretty much firmly into hard rock and classic rock at that point. So we're overlooking this, but it's not just, and they're from Minneapolis, so like the home of Prince, and they're a punk band. And there's 2 brothers, technically half brothers, Tommy Stinson on the bass, Bob Stinson on guitar, Chris Mars on the drums. And that's the band. But Tommy was so young that when they made like their second album, you know, he was just 16 years old. He basically had to drop out of school so they could go on tour. And they were definitely a punk band to start with. I mean, straight up punk, like 2 chords and a cloud of dust, quick, fast songs that are about, you know, the kind of the basics in life. And then when it got to this album, they decided they wanted to write better songs with a little deeper meaning, and songs with more melody. And while I think they achieved that, they certainly didn't completely abandon their punk roots on this album. Far from it.
Right. And you were talking about Tommy Stinson. I think that Bob wanted to keep him out of trouble, but also needed somebody to play the bass. So he was like, come over here. I'm going to teach you these 3 things, and I'll give you a candy bar or something if you don't complain that your fingers hurt. But yeah, he was really young. And I think, yeah, it was the 3 of them. And then Westerberg was like a janitor or something. And I think he heard them playing and just went over to the house and introduced himself and just said, this is how it's going to happen. So it was pretty organic, and they were all young. I think Westerberg was only like 24 when they made this record, which meant Stinson was like 18. Right.
You know, because he's still not that old, Paul Westerberg. I mean, he's 64 as we're recording this, right? So, I mean, given the people who we usually have on the show who've made albums that we love, he's relatively young, right? And so, yeah, their second album, Hootenanny, had come out the year before, and they had done some touring and got some, you know, experience under their belt. And, you know, that's a fairly pure punk album, and it's 31 minutes long, right? I mean, it's pretty short. And then this one, released October 2nd, 1984, it's 33 and a half minutes long. But some of the melodies and some of the themes they're dealing with on this album are pretty grown up and mature. And the band is obviously moving forward at this point. They're not just sitting there being punks. However, I mean, they still had some of that punk attitude. They would intentionally like mess up a gig when they knew record company people were coming, like they put stink bombs out there or something like that, or they get so wasted that they couldn't do a good show, you know. And I think they even like played to some prisons or even a halfway house or something like that, but they'd be wasted. So it wouldn't go down very well, because like these are people trying to stay sober, get their lives in check, and they see these punk kids just acting like idiots in front of them, like this isn't working. So they had to clean up a little bit. And I think they had a manager who, you know, really kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say he kept them on the straight and narrow, but he at least pushed them, and that's Peter Jesperson, he pushed them to take it somewhat seriously and make a go of doing this for a living.
So you remember when we were talking to Steve Kilby from the church, and he raised the concept of what does the artist owe the audience? apparently, according to the Replacements, it was nothing. They would do whatever they wanted to. Sometimes they would play songs that you knew, like they would do covers of like 70s, like pop rock stuff. You never knew what you were going to get. It depended what mood they were, how drunk they were, whether they were feeling it that night. And I think Westerberg said something too about how, well, some nights it's great and some nights it's not. Okay, but like people paid to get in there and see this. And so that was part of it too. They put on dresses. They didn't care. And that's part of the deal, is you never knew what you were going to get. So the lore of like it was an experience to go and see these guys.
Well, that's right. And so they had a little bit of a repertoire. This was their third album, right? But also recorded around this time and released in, January of 1985. So it was October 2nd, 84, Let It Be comes out. They go and do a show in Oklahoma. It's November 11th, 1984. And then they release a live album called The Shit Hits the Fans. Very punk of them, January 25th, 1985. It was only released on cassette. They only made 10,000 of them, and they sold basically every one. There were some they kept and handed out as like promotional things, but it's almost all covers. It's like 24 songs, and almost all of them are covers. And you get a lot of different stuff in here. You get I'll Be There. You'll get a Robin Hitchcock song, Saturday Night Special by Leonard Skinner. You get Iron Man by Black Sabbath. You get Misty Mountain Hop and Heartbreaker by Led Zeppelin. Can't Get Enough. Bad Company, Jailbreak, Thin Lizzy, Breakdown, Tom Petty, Taking Care of Business, I Will Follow, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Radio Free Europe by REM. And of course they finish the album with Let It Be. And I guess Jesperson was a pretty big Beatles fan, and they were talking about, hey, what are we going to call this album? And they're going to call it, something stupid, something idiotic, if they could get away with it. And then eventually it was like, all right, fine. It was going to call it Whistler's Mammy. They're call it Stunk after the first album, or it was called, after they had a thing called Stink or whatever. And then he said, you know what? We said, next song that comes on the radio, that's going to be the title. And then, of course, the next thing that comes on, When I Find Myself in Times of Trouble. And Jesperson's like, yeah, they're not going to do that. They're just sending me up, because he's a big Beatles fan. Mm-hmm. And I guess it was their way of saying nothing's sacred.
Yeah.
Nothing's sacred. In fact, they thought about calling their next album Let It Bleed. So they're just being punks for punk's sake. But this thing, not even retrospectively, at the time, was hailed as this great step forward, a great new American rock album. Good old Robert Christgau of The Village Voice, who shits all over everything, loved it. And he said the band has matured, they're incorporating melody in their music, and they're writing about their likes and dislikes rather just to, whatever garage rock is supposed to be, just hating everything or whatever. And he put it second on his own list of of records of the year, and 10th best of the 80s. And so that's a pretty big deal for whatever it's worth. Obviously critics don't always hold the opinion of the greater public, but Rolling Stone ranked it 239 out of 500 greatest albums of all time. And then when they rebooted their list in 2020, it was at 156. So it was held in like even higher esteem. And VH1 put it in their top 100, and Pitchfork put it in their top 30, and Spin ranked it 12 on their 25 greatest albums of all time. That seems like a stretch.
So that's part of why I'm like, if everybody kind of holds it in this regard, we have to take a look at this thing.
Yeah.
And I think the nice part too is it was made. Yeah, they had a manager, yeah, they had a producer, but they pretty much could do whatever they wanted to. And it was a step forward as far as actually composing songs and not just, playing three chords and banging stuff out. And then, well, I guess we'll pick a title later.
Yeah. And they're learning songs fast too. And they're learning a lot of covers. The B-sides to their first single were 20th Century Boy by Mark Bolan and Hank Williams.
Was it Hey Good Looking?
It was Hey Good Looking. Hank Williams, yeah. Hey Good Looking. Stuff that ended up like on the anniversary edition that they were also doing at the time was Temptation Highs by the Grassroots and Heartbeat, It's a Love Beat by the DeFranco family, so random odd ones. And there's a cover on here that's obviously one we're really familiar with. It's about halfway through the album that we'll get to there. But look, Westerberg is writing the songs. And then if something's like a punk song that just kind of charging forward and maybe the lyrics aren't that great, then the four of them wrote it together for the most part. And the second, third, and fourth songs and then plus the 9th song. And we'll get to all of them, their names here.
Hey everybody, this is Britt Lightning from Vixen, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
But it starts off with I Will Dare, a Westerberg written tune, which is also their first single. It was released in July of 84, and it's the only single released off the album. And the next single released is Bastards of Young off Tim, which would come out in 1985, the one that you were like, oh, you kind of discovered like, hey, this is actually pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So they start off with this song. How do you think, what do you think of I Will Dare as far as the song goes, as far as how you start off the record?
It's great because you got that little guitar intro and then Stinson comes in with the bass line. It's cool because we love guitar rock, right? Where you get the riff, but this, because the bass is just holding down the fort, it's different and it's really cool. And then you've got Westerberg, who sounds like he's been eating fiberglass with his vocals.
A little rough,
like, yeah, but it totally works for these songs.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's just a great little song. It's got a nice melody to it. He's singing about, how young are you? How old am I? He's got great lyrics. That's the other thing too. Is
he does.
He can turn a phrase like nobody's business.
He's really good at it. Yeah, he's totally underrated. I think that's why once the Hollywood set kind of caught on to him, that he was in, and he did a lot of different soundtrack work after singles because he does. And then he got to write songs with like Joan Jett and other people because he knows what he's doing when it comes to putting words on paper.
But I think here's where the problems are going to start also, because like you pointed out, the ones that are hard and fast are everybody, including Bob Stinson. And then the ones that have a little more crafting to them are Westerberg songs. And I think now is to the beginning of when Bob is kind of starting to feel like he's drifting away from this deal, or this is becoming not what he originally started in his basement.
Well, yeah, I mean, and some people want to stay that kind of local or regional band their whole lives. And, I know that they're sabotaging stuff. They didn't want to be big label. They didn't want that huge American success, but you want some success. It's just natural that you want some people to like what you're doing.
Correct.
And why not have 2,000 instead of 200? I
right.
mean, it's only natural. Actually, Paul did try to get this on Hootenanny. I guess it was kind of the end of those sessions. And he called Jesperson and was like, I just wrote the best song I've ever written my whole life. It's got to go on the album. And he's like, no, I'm sorry. It's already happened. Like it's printing, like it's off. It's happening. You can put it on the next one. And they tried to get Peter Buck to come in and to produce the album for them. Peter Buck, of course, is the legendary guitarist of REM, because they had opened for REM on a tour, which is a big deal for them. And this is kind of at the time when college radio was a really big deal, and that there was this whole other set of bands that mainstream audiences didn't know because they didn't play them on pop radio and they didn't play them really on MTV. Yet there were bands that did very well like on this college circuit, because you could play, there's 2,000 colleges in the US, something like that. So there's a lot of places for you to go play, and college radio would get the music out to the kids. And I remember I was a long-time Rolling Stone subscriber, had it when we were in college together. Every second or third week next to the top 40 albums charts, they would put the college charts up there.
Right.
And it would have Robin Hitchcock and the Egyptians, and it would have The Fall and REM, even though at that point REM was pretty big. They'd have these bands that were doing well on college campuses, not in the mainstream. And so Peter came and talked with him a little bit, hung out with him. He actually played the solo on I Will Dare.
Right.
Which is cool. But this wasn't, it didn't hit the charts anywhere in America, really anywhere in the world. But it hit number one on 55 different college radio stations. So that's helping to bubble them up, right? Yeah, I think it's a good song. It's got a little rockabilly, like some softer Stray Cats, and the guitar following the vocals is pretty cool. And so it's a cool way to start it off, and it's not just a pure punk song.
How smart are you? How dumb am I? Don't count any of my advice. Meet me any place or anywhere at any time. Now I don't care, meet me tonight. If you were dead, I'm dead.
So it's like, yeah, okay, great. These guys are off and running. They've grown up a little bit. Let's see what else they got. Now, the second song favorite thing. This is a pretty punkish song.
Yeah.
And this is all four of them get the right, but it's got a much better melody than your average punk song. And when he's singing "You're My Favorite Thing," it's got that nimble guitar the guy's plucking away at that you just don't see from a punk band,
Which is interesting because there is a note about how Bob couldn't figure out a solo for "I Will Dare." I'm like, really? Because he does pretty well on the rest of this record. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what was going on with that. I mean, I don't hate the fact that Peter Buck is on the record because it's kind of a cool footnote. But yeah, I think he does a great job on the rest of this deal. To me, this one also sounds like it's a little rockabilly, but you still got that like rock don't give a shit attitude in there. Yeah. I think, and the other line I love is, I think big once in a while.
Right.
Like, again, like you want to move this thing forward, but you don't want to lose what you have here. And going back to the college deal, I think it was a big kind of badge of honor if you knew who the Replacements were and you listened to them, oh, they're not mainstream, or lamestream as it's called now.
Right.
Where I'm cool, I know about these guys. This is my band, and I think that's they wanted it. I think they always wanted to keep it right here. Like they were a huge independent band, and that can't last forever.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it didn't last for REM. I mean, because they were so good. They were such good songwriters. They were so good at playing together.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, they were the biggest college band. Hard to call them underground because they were, by 85 and 86, they're actually playing arenas.
Yeah.
But they were born out of that college circuit and just making a record a year and going out there and just hitting the road hard.
But I think too that helped with that college chart also, because at that point in time you could say, hey, we're looking for the next REM, we're looking for the next people that we can
Smiths
break big,
whatever.
and yeah, exactly. And I think the major labels thought these guys were going to be the next REM to go huge.
Yeah, Dad, you fucking feel bad. Don't break your neck with the fall of that done. Yeah, I know, I love, I feel. Small that trigger, I'm feeling swell. Yeah, I hear the things here. Rock don't give a single shit. Yeah.
Well, with Westerberg's writing, they might have been, but, it just didn't work out that way. We'll get into a little bit of that, kind of the aftermath. The third song, "We're Coming Out."
Yeah.
This is a noisy punk song.
Yeah, this is what, if you were here for punk, this is what you're
This is
going
what
to
you
be
showed
happy.
up
Yeah,
for,
exactly. Yeah.
And then it's got a slow down,
Yeah.
bit where it kind of, you got the snaps
And the
clicks
piano.
in there. And then
Yeah.
it builds right back up at the end to this frenetic punk frenzy with feedback and screaming and then it's over. And that's so punk, man. I mean, it really is.
One more night, get it half right. One more warning sound. We're coming out. 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 We're coming out.
They may be moving forward. Their lyrics and their melodies might be better, but I mean,
They
2
can still
minutes,
bring it.
21
Yeah.
seconds. That's a punk song. Favorite thing, 2 minutes and 19 seconds. And this fourth song, "Tommy Gets His Tonsils Out," which is, it's hilarious. It's not even 2 minutes, but
No.
it's got a good riff.
Yes.
It's got a really good riff on "Tommy Got His Tonsils Out." And it's just funny. Rip, we're going to rip him out now. Like, are they really talking about Tommy getting his tonsils out? Like, I assume they are. Like, this is a real thing that they're singing about.
And I love the theme in here too of this, this little kid, he's going to get his tonsils out. You've got this complete and total a-hole doctor who's, get this over with. I tee off in an hour. My Cadillac's running. Come on, let's see a little snot. We don't have any more gas left for you. We're just going to do this. And I think this whole record is about it's coming of age. And you're not a kid anymore, but you're not an adult. You've got this weird in between. I don't know what's gonna happen. And so you're kind of starting to see the world for what it really is. Like, oh, a doctor is a revered professional member of society. No, he's not. He's just some jackoff who wants to go play golf and doesn't really care about. He just wants to get this over with, get paid, and get out of here.
Right. Yeah. does not care about you, especially you, little punk. You know.
No.
So those are the first 4 songs of the album. Good. Some good riffs, some good lyrics. If you liked Hootenanny, this wouldn't be foreign to you.
Right.
It would be a step forward, and I think you would like it. Now, the next 3 or 4 songs, to me, kind of really helped define this album in a big way.
Okay.
Besides the 6th song, which is a cover, Westerberg wrote all these on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And the first song, Androgynous, a lot of people say it's ahead of its time.
Yes.
It's interesting because, to the best of my knowledge, Paul Westerberg is not gay or on the LGBTQ spectrum. And one girl at one of his shows, I think, called him androgynous. He didn't know what it meant. He had to go home and look it up. To me, it's a very interesting song for a punk band to create. Now, the lyrics and theme being that you're an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
He wears a dress and she wears, I'll get the right lyrics here in a second,
Yeah.
but that's punk in that it's against what is quote unquote normal in society. But if it's not your own personal experience, it's a little strange that they would choose to write this song,
I think, yeah, as far as I know, none of these guys are gay.
Right.
But I was watching something about this, and they brought up the fact that it's what they did was queer. And the meaning of the word queer is to take something and change it a little bit, like to go outside of what you think is normal. And that's what these guys were all about. Like, they were going to do whatever they wanted to. They were going to turn things on their head. They were going to show up wearing women's clothing just so people would say, what the hell is going on here?
These guys are weird.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to me, it's more of just being who you are, and it doesn't matter who you are as long as you can embrace yourself. And I think that's a big deal with becoming an adult. Like, I'm not a child anymore. Who am I? I don't know. Some people, it's clearly defined. Some people don't have a problem with it, but a lot of people do. Just finding their footing in the world. And I think these dudes all came from not the greatest families.
That's right.
So they didn't maybe have a support system of, this is how you become an adult. So they're just kind of wandering around. And the fact that it's just that lone piano.
Mm-hmm. It's a very spare song as far as the music goes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not angry. It's more like sad. Like, just let people be who they are. Shut up.
Yeah. It's kind of a lament.
Yeah.
It's like, here comes Dick. He's wearing a skirt. Here comes Jane. She's sporting a chain. Same hair, revolution. Same build, evolution. But tomorrow, who's going to fuss? Like, right now, you got to take shit from society for the way you look or the way you feel.
Right.
But one day, it's not going to matter,
Yeah.
Don't get him wrong. Don't get him mad. He might be a father, but he sure ain't a dad. And she don't need advice that centered her. She's happy with the way she looks. She's happy with her gender.
Here comes Dick, he's wearing a skirt. Here comes Jane, she's sporting a chain. Same hair evolution, same build evolution. Tomorrow who's gonna fuss? And they love each other so. Androgynous.
And I think one of the best lines is here. Mirror image, see no damage, see no evil at all. Cupid dolls in urine stalls will be laughed at the way you're laughed at now, which basically means those male women standards, the girls play with the Cupid dolls and the boys go piss over here. Mm-hmm. Those old standards of these kind of gender, you fall in these boxes, you behave and look these ways. One day that's going to be laughed at the way people laugh at you for looking so different now.
Right. And, probably in 40 years, we won't have to worry about this anymore. Oh, wait. Oh, boy.
But 40 years later, now it's at the forefront. Back then,
Mm-hmm.
that's just pressed all the way to the back. I mean, you couldn't even talk about being gay.
Well,
let alone people who want to change their gender or dress,
Mm-hmm.
like the opposite gender or whatever.
Well, that goes back to the wordsmithing. Don't get him wrong and don't get him mad. He might be a father, but he sure ain't a dad. So don't piss off the old man with coming home in a dress. What the fuck is wrong with you? Well, I didn't raise no homo. It's just that you don't have this support system. You're trying to make it in the world, and people just don't understand you and don't want to understand you and want to point and say, well, you're a weirdo. That's weird.
Mm-hmm. And it's basically telling people, if you're a weirdo, you just hang it in there.
Yeah.
You just hang in there because your day's coming. It's not wrong about it. Crash Test Dummies did a cover of this. Joan Jett covered it. It's got the brushes on the drums and the piano without a lot of noise,
Yeah.
And then it ends on a weird off-key note.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like, and it's over.
Yeah, like you miss a note on the piano and then it's done.
But obviously this is going to appeal in a big way to certain people. And even if it's not what your life is all about, you can appreciate, it's a pretty damn good little song.
And you can, I think, even if it's not about you, about the dressing differently or being confused or whatever, you can pick up something in this. If you're a child becoming an adult, at some point in time, somebody didn't understand something about you. And so I think it's very universal, even if you pick little pieces out of this.
Yeah, definitely. Look, even the uncool kid, even the super cool kids who fit in and conform to all that stuff, they're still going through hard stuff. Do I fit in? Should I fit in? Am I selling out who I am to be part of this clique? It's not easy for anyone. Say, the cool kids, they got it made. Well, the rich kids might have it made. But just because you're cool doesn't mean you got it made, kind of thing. I don't know. Good song. And then very original. And then the next song, the only cover on the album, Black Diamond, my favorite Kiss song.
I don't think I was paying attention. I was just listening to it. And so it goes into it, and then he goes, out on the streets for a living. Is this Black Diamond? This is awesome. And they play the hell out of this.
They do.
It sounds really good. And the nice part was the original was sung by, even though it was written by Paul Stanley, sung by Peter Criss, the main part anyway. And Westerberg's voice fits very well into that delivery.
That's right. It's got that kind of gravelly voice on it, a little rough. It's not a word for word cover. They don't sing the lyrics exactly the same way all the way through. It doesn't have the big breakdown at the end with the big ace solo and all that kind of, because Black Diamonds, I think, is more than 5 minutes. This is not even 3 minutes. And when they start that, there's no hit it that we're used to from Paul, but it is heavy. They're tuned down and it's heavy. And I always like this because obviously I already knew it because I'm a big Kiss fan. It doesn't have the ooh like chorus or anything like that. It doesn't have a big fat hot ace guitar solo anywhere. But it's a very punk version of the song. And if you're someone trying to get into the Replacements and Kiss, then it's a great way for you to say, oh, okay, they like Kiss too. They found a way in. This is my way into them too. And my guess is most Kiss fans wouldn't degrade it. I mean, obviously it's not as good. It's not the same thing. It's not trying to be. It's a garage band version of this song cut in half. Yeah, but I think that most Kiss fans would really like this.
There's no way. There is no way if you're a Kiss fan, you could hate this because it's the attitude and the energy they bring to the song is phenomenal. They're not goofing on it. They're these guys are, mainstream. They saw it. It sounds to me like they really love it. I was trying to find information on why they did it. Like were they big Kiss fan? I couldn't find anything, but it fits very well and they do a great job. And even though the solo isn't Ace Frehley going off the rails, it's still pretty good for this version of the song.
No, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. And the album's pretty short. I think at some point someone said you got to put another song or two on here, And obviously we know that they have done lots of covers, and 20th Century Boy and Heartbeat's a Love Beat, Temptation Eyes, all that kind of stuff. They kind of all recorded these to use them as B-sides to see if maybe one might fit on the album. And they said, we decided it was cooler to put the uncool song on the album than to put a cool, like 20th Century Boy cover on the album. Because T-Rex, he's an icon to a lot of people. It's like, okay, but putting Kiss on there, especially in like 1984 when Kiss was super uncool at that point. Like they'd gone through the disco and appealing to little kids thing. They'd taken off the makeup at this point, and they're like, yeah, we decided to go ahead and do the uncool one, put the Kiss song on there. That would be more punk than putting a punk icon song on there. So that's what they did. And it made they call it was a ferocious palate cleanser ahead of the next song, which is Unsatisfied, which may just be the best song on the album. One of the best songs they ever did, Unsatisfied.
It's pretty good. And I've got notes in here where they didn't think it was finished. And I know Bob didn't really like it because he figured, well, if we'd worked on it more, it could have been better. This is a pretty good song. I don't know what he's complaining about. And that acoustic intro at the beginning, because they just come off Black Diamond, there's Hard Luck Woman in there. And like almost when they get to the part where they switch to electric, I'm like, are they going to do Hard Luck Woman now? They would do two of these covers. But yeah, it's got a cool acoustic intro, and then it's kind of like, it's got the same feel as Androgynous, as far as like just this forlorn, like you're not mad, you're just kind of disgusted with life. And it's there's not a whole lot to the lyrics, but you get what he's trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody can relate to it at some point. Even if you're doing well in life, there's still things that are working against you. There's still things that kind of suck in life. It's look me in the eye, then tell me that I'm satisfied. Look at me. Don't say how good I had it compared to you. Don't talk about the opportunities I have or where I'm going. Just look me in the eye and tell me I'm satisfied. And are you satisfied? Go so slowly on. Everything I've wanted. Tell me what's wrong.
Then tell me that I'm satisfied. Would you satisfied? Look me in the eye, then tell me that I'm satisfied.
I just think that everyone can relate to this on some level, and it's very punk. Unsatisfied, yeah. Everything you dream of is right in front of you. And everything is a lie, or liberty is a lie, because you're free. Okay, you're free from your parents. Well, but you don't have their health care. You don't have the refrigerator. You don't have this nice house. You have this shithole to live in, kind of thing. So yeah, there's not a lot to the song, and I think that it came in unfinished, and Bob put some stuff down. Paul eventually layered over the 12-string guitar. Didn't take long to make, I don't think.
Yeah. And just his vocals on this too, like they're just that, like they're cracking in a lot of places. You can hear him just
the
expressing
angst,
himself. Yeah, just
yearning
like
for something better.
Like, is this it? Yeah, come on. I mean, again, you got to be pretty psyched. Your band's up and coming. You're
touring with
on
REM,
the right track. Like, really, is this it? Is this what it was supposed to be? Like, all right.
Yeah, and I feel like you can sing along to it, and you don't have to be a great singer.
That is true.
It's great. I mean, honestly,
and I like the guitar. Just kind of, it's kind of just ringing in and out. It's not. It doesn't have the electric guitar anyway. It's not a integral part of the melody, but it adds. It's floating on top there.
Here's a note for us that we would like.
Right.
When Keith toured with the Expensive Winos in 1988, they opened on a bill with him.
Oh,
and
really?
They dedicated Unsatisfied him to him. Of course, he wrote Can't Get No Satisfaction. But, this was not released as a single. But it's one that, I mean, I think that people, that they played the whole time they were together and that the fans love. It's just something that they can relate to. You can you're not hopping up and down, pumping your fist in the air. You can get your woman and then just put her in front of you and hug her and just, kind of sway back and forth to Unsatisfied. So I just remember, when would it have been? 2001, 2002, sometime in there during the heady days of Napster and those file sharing services. I got a hold of this and I made this and Tim, I kind of put them all on one CD because you could. It still wasn't 70 minutes of music for the two of them. And just remember hearing this, I'm like, now this is a good song. Like this is a mature song, and it's the longest almost on the album. It's over 4 minutes. So this is a grown up yet still stuck in this adolescent world kind of thing from Westerberg. I think it's great.
Yeah, it is a great song, and I can't imagine that you would. There's nobody that can't like this thing. I'm sorry, there's just no way. It's just so raw that it's not tainted by anything. It's just a dude who's he's just lost and is not. I mean, it's not like he's out of control. Like I'm living on the street, but it's just like, yeah, what do I do? Like I don't know.
What am I supposed to want? It's not about getting what you want. It's about wanting what you get. And is this what I want? I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, the fourth of these 4 songs that I think really make the album, Senior Video, great riff to open this thing.
Yeah.
And then it's about halfway through you realize this is an instrumental. They're not even going to sing. And it kind of feels like, okay, well, then there's a bridge in there. Okay, they were making a song, but they just kind of forgot to put lyrics on it. But then with a minute or so left, something like that, there are the words. Seeing your video of phony rock and roll, we don't want to know. Basically making fun of people who are on MTV. Which, they'd embrace a little bit later, but they're like, this is, that's not what we want. Well, yeah, because you're a punk. You want to be underground. You don't want anybody to really know you.
All day, all night, all music videos.
And you don't like people that sell out. You don't like people that are, on message or on brand and corporate shills. They would go on to make videos, but against their will, and not very exciting ones.
Right. I guess sometimes if you're really acting out a cheesy role in a video, I can see why they would make fun of you for that. And, there's one thing to have a performance video. It's like, this is how we do it. This is what we do. Just roll the cameras. The other, if you're playing a role and acting something out, like, okay, that's cheesy. It's a 4-minute movie of your shitty song. But because the riffs are so good, I just like it. It seems like maybe they just needed 2 more songs for the record. It's like, okay, pick a cover, whichever cover you guys think. All right, let's take the uncool one. We'll take the Kiss one. And then, all right, get the Senior Video. Yeah, put some lyrics on that, and we'll throw that in there too. I'm probably wrong about that, but that's just kind of what the feel is to me.
Yeah, you said halfway. It's more than halfway through the song, because I wrote that down too. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not halfway. That's almost at the end that they threw in some lyrics. And when we throw the lyrics in, it's basically a middle finger to the record company.
Pretty much.
Or the record industry.
Yeah, that they're not really a part of.
Correct.
This is Mel Gannon from Simple Minds. You listen to the Ugly American Werewolf in London. You stay cool and see you soon.
Okay. So now we come back. Next song, written by all of them, and then apparently Ted Nugent.
All right.
They must have borrowed a riff or something like this for this 2.5-minute pure punk song, Gary's Got a Boner. Now, I'm sorry I did not know this while we lived together. I'm going to admit that. I would have sung this to you all the time, or do anything to embarrass you in front of our friends or something.
And it's funny because when I first saw that title, I'm like, oh yeah, that's embarrassing. But like, what I love about, well, first of all, I'm into my 50s now. Boner will never not be a funny word. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was listening to this record last night at like 11 o'clock. I'm like, I'll get one more listen in. Everybody else in my house is asleep, and I'm laughing hysterically in my office because he's singing Gary's Got a Boner. It's hilarious. It's very punk, but it's not. To me, like you said, oh, it's embarrassing. I don't get that from this song. I get the fact that it's just like this is kind of like a middle finger, like watch what I can do. I'm coming out. I'm gonna take over the world. Don't worry about all that other shit. You're gonna make it big. Don't worry about it.
Well, it's interesting you saw it that way. I mean, look, the riff, all that stuff is pure punk, straight ahead, all that kind of stuff. I wonder if it's like the pressure to go and have sex before you have any kind of a relationship kind of thing, before you have any kind of emotional meaning in your life. Like, you got to go out there and bust it. Virgins are losers, man. You got to go out there and screw. You got to fuck. Man. No, don't have a girlfriend. That's dumb. Just go out there and screw. That's the way it is, And
Interesting.
Hookup culture, It's like, get your head on straight. Okay, you're going to get her down. You're going to finger to her. You're going to suck me down. Then you're going to see her out. Forget about the lights and the girls, grab a hold, stick it to her, tied up your sister by the fender. I don't know if I will. Yes, you're going to stick it to her. You're going to stick it to her. And then you're cool because you had sex. Even if she wasn't interested, even if you didn't even like her that much, at least, you're not some punk jerking off, right? Kind of thing. I don't know. Enough for more,
I really wanted to have there be a connection between this and Gary from Weird Science. Like, I couldn't find anything, but I'm just like, the scene where she's talking about like all he would do is just sit in his room and toss off, and then the parents, Gary, I never tossed off. I just thought about that. Like, there's got to be. Come on.
You told me you were combing your hair, but I was.
But this is a nice change of pace because it's just a straight ahead banger, and it's just I don't know what the set list was back in the day, but like, could you imagine the whole crowd just screaming Gary's got a boner?
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the point of the song, right? Talking about a boner. That's the fun part. You're at a punk show. You're all hopping around. It's a 2.5-minute thrash song. Gary's got a boner. It's. By the way, our friend Ellen from school will still use Gary's mom's voice. Oh yeah, me and Gary were hanging out there. Oh, Gary, yeah, he's our teenage boy.
And then when the dad's just like, "Shut up,
Lucy, shut up, Gary, shut up."
Oh, good times.
Do you go to Gary's school? Okay, we gotta get through this.
Moving on.
All right, so this one thing I read said, all right, Gary's Got a Boner is kind of a throwaway track, just far, fast pace, all that kind of stuff. But then the next one, 16 Blue,
yeah,
it's a little more grown up than, say, Gary's Got a Boner. And it says is he channeling Tommy as a 16-year-old? Trying to see what he's going through? Because to me, it's more sexual, if not confusion, at least a little ambiguity on like, what am I supposed to be doing here?
So maybe these two songs kind of do go together. Maybe Gary's Got a Boner is this is, you go out and screw, blah, blah, blah. And then 16 Blue was like, wait, hold on. What's really happening here? Is this really what we're supposed to be doing? Brag about things you don't understand. A girl and a woman, a boy and a man. Everything is sexually vague. Now you're wondering yourself that you might be gay.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is, these are thoughts that teenage people have. Like there's so much going on in your life.
Yeah.
Schoolwork, family life, and also, the feelings that you're having, you're physically becoming an adult.
Yep.
You don't know, and I've known a couple of women who I've talked to this about, but I can't relate to that part of it. But as a male, it's crazy because it's just like you want to be able. You don't want to ever, as a man, you don't ever want to have those thoughts of, I don't know what's going on. You always want to say, I got this. No problem.
Exactly.
But this part of your life, it's like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know who I'm supposed to be. I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. I don't know anything.
And the whole time, you're supposed to have this front like, I'm cool. I could do anything.
Yeah.
Exactly. Man, I got chicks figured out, man. It ain't
Correct.
No thing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the lyrics, trying to figure out, they wonder what next she'll pull. You don't understand anything sexual. But I tell my friends, I'm doing fine, even though I don't understand. Your age is the hardest age. Everything drags and drags. You're looking funny. You ain't laughing, though, are you? 16 Blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of, sometimes I wish that I had something like this to relate to, because I kind of went along with the crowd. Like,
Right.
everyone's talking tough. Yeah, I'm talking tough too.
But
I didn't want a girlfriend in high school. I didn't, because that didn't seem cool. Just hooking up with some chick on a party. Now that was cool, because you got your action, but you didn't have to count out okay, honey, we'll go do whatever you want to do today. Like, nah, I'm not doing any of that.
Right. And then of course, to whoever you were quote unquote dating, that was a mark on you. Oh, well, she's whatever. Well, yeah, no, I don't, that's not what are you going to get married? Shut up.
Yeah. It's like getting laid was cool, but having a girlfriend wasn't. But if you're not with a girlfriend who you can kind of get to know emotionally and share some things, so you think, I don't know. I was not a lady killer in high school, but I did have interest from and with these creatures.
Correct.
That I still to this day don't understand.
I don't think you ever will.
But I've been able to navigate, okay, this is how I communicate with them. This is how they communicate with me. We won't always be on the same page, but we have to respect each other.
Right. And here are the danger points. Here's the stuff that if you
gotta
cross
stay
this
away
line,
from. Yeah.
correct, you would not be having a great next couple of days. Yeah, and like you said, you want to have this cool exterior, like I got this all figured out. But inside you're like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know how to feel. Like you said, I want to relate to women, but I don't know how. I don't know how to talk to them. I don't even know if I should be talking to them, because is it cool? Is it not cool? It is brutal to be that age.
And if you were actually gay or having those feelings, which you and I didn't have to deal with,
right?
But if you were during this time of your life, oh my goodness.
In 1984?
Oh, that would be so hard.
Nope.
That would be so hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and especially if you lived, I don't know how it was where you were, but like where I grew up, there gay people existed, but they were like unicorns. Like no one's ever actually seen one.
Same,
and there's nobody that's in this high school that's gay. Well, yeah, there are. You just don't know, because they will never say anything.
Yeah, exactly. No, you didn't talk about it, A. B, you kind of led to believe like 1 in 10,000 people were gay. Like it's very odd. Yes, there's gay people. And like, I remember the guy who did cut my hair when I was in high school was pretty obviously gay.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the guy was great. He's nice to me, made me look good. He's personable. He's fun to be around, at least while cutting my hair. But it's like, you've got all these feelings. There's so much to go through, and you don't really have anyone to talk to about it usually. You're the oldest. Did your younger brothers come to you?
A little bit, but no. There was nothing really we ever talked about, and I think the more that I think about it,
you guys are so Irish, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, we've got you just take that emotion and you squeeze it into a little hole and you push it down,
shove it down,
and everything's cool, and don't even worry about it. Yeah, it is rough, because it's not something that, like you said, you're going to talk to your old man about it. You're going to talk to your friends. Like, there's like that. Hey, listen, like we don't really want any problems. Okay, everything needs to be cool. Everything's cool, right? Yeah, everything's cool.
Yeah, everything's cool. Yeah. Well, you don't want to hear it from your dad, even if you guys are buddies.
Right.
It's just a different generation. You don't want to hear it from him. You're certainly not going to talk to your mom about it. And then, there's that worry. If I open up to my buddies, will they see me as weak? Will they go tell everybody, this is what he said and feels?
Yeah.
Isn't that weak of him? What a pussy.
Yeah.
So you just don't talk about it, and you remain confused. I'm surprised we took this long on this song, but there's pretty universal.
There's a lot packed in there, and again, I go back to there's no way they would have been able to release this song on a major record label.
Right.
The fact that they have this indie deal and they can pretty much do whatever they want, you get stuff like this.
Yeah. And it hits. It hits the point. It hits the mark. It's communicating. Okay. And then we wrap up with Answering Machine. Now we talk a lot about sequencing on this show, about how you put the records together. Generally, the last song is the second or third worst song on the album. Mm-hmm. I think this is about the second best song on the album. I've always loved this one. I always have. Obviously, because of the title, it's dated a little bit, because nobody really has an answering machine anymore, like at their house.
Right.
But it's kind of showing his problem of I'm starting to make it in a band, which is what I wanted. However, now I'm on the road all the time. And when I call my girlfriend, I just get the answering machine. You know, and it kind of had some of that kind of old school do. If you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try again, you know. I think it's a great song. I think sonically it's cool. I think his vocals sound a little different than they did anywhere else on the album. Like they used an old microphone, or he stood a certain length away or something like that. But I think this is a great one.
And I like the fact that it's just the guitar, and there's a great tone to it. It almost sounds like, you know, it could be some kind of 80s stadium rock, you know, you can still rock in America or something. But then he goes into, and again, the dude can write some lyrics, trying to breathe some life into a letter. And, you know, you were talking about we don't have answering machines anymore, but it's the same thing as a text. You know, it's like that random, like there's no emotion. You're not really talking to somebody. It's just words. And just this guy who's just lonely. And you were talking about the pre-recorded stuff. If you want to leave a message at the end, it keeps saying, if you need help, if you need help, if you need help, this guy needs help.
Yeah, obviously. Let's talk about my courage is at its peak. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you say you're okay to an answering machine? How do you say good night, or I love you, or I miss you to an answering machine? Big time's got its losers. Small town's got its vices. A handful of friends. One needs a match. One needs some ice. Call waiting phone in another time zone. He's just good. Try to free a slave of ignorance. Try to teach a whore about romance. These are good lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that, you know, like you pick the phone up and you can't wait to talk to this person. And then you get that fucking answering machine again. They're not there. I can't talk. Now I got to go to sleep. Or it's, you know, he's saying time zones. You're a million miles away. This was my one chance to talk to you, and it's not going to work out. And now I've got to go back to, you know, my crappy hotel room or my whatever. Like you're on the road somewhere. You're in the middle of nowhere. All you want to do is talk to somebody, and there's no one to talk to.
Yeah, and you gotta love the guitar on it. You know, it's so good. You know, I mean, it really is.
And the fact that they just chose to do nothing else, just have that one guitar and that's it, and him singing over it. Yeah, it's just phenomenal.
It's fantastic. And so that's the record, all 33 and a half minutes of it. And yeah, to a certain set, this is an all-time classic. To the pop people, they don't even know this existed. And this definitely got them acclaim. And then the next year, they put out Tim, which again was got good, and it was on Sire. I mean, I think it helped them get picked up by a little bit bigger record label, or whatever. It definitely helped them, and it's got the song Bastards of Young. I think they played somewhere around that time Saturday Night Live.
Oof.
And basically got kicked off for life.
Correct.
Because they
using
used a bad word. Yeah.
Yes.
They also did Kiss Me on the Bus. Maybe we do Tim next year, because
I'd like to.
There's some great ones on here.
Yeah.
So we'll think about that for 2025, hopefully. So they're really going in the right direction, but Bob's starting to get a little fed up at this time. He leaves in 1986 and doesn't live a whole lot longer. I mean, didn't OD, but died from bad overuse of drugs.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. He just beat himself to death with drugs and alcohol, and just a profoundly unhappy person. I think we were talking before about, you know, they came from not the greatest homes. I think he had a real rough childhood, you know, bouncing in and out of like foster homes and stuff like that.
Yeah. And like his mom, I think Tommy, who was 7 years younger than him, was living with Tommy's dad, and his name was Stinson. So she just gave him the name Stinson, even though that's not his dad, and his mother never even married the guy. Just kind of gave him that. So that's got to be tough on a guy. Like, you get this name for a guy you're not even related to. Your mom didn't even marry the guy, you know?
Yeah.
Like, Slim Dunlap replaced him in the band. Eventually, towards the end of the 80s, the band was just kind of falling apart. It was clear that Westerberg was going to move on and become a solo artist. And so all shook down. I mean, Don't Tell a Soul in 89, I think they started to do some videos, and they got a little bit of recognition for it. But by the time All Shook Down came out the next year, it was going to be a Paul Westerberg solo album. But then apparently somebody convinced him, well, you need to make it a Replacements album, not a solo album.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if that was the right call or not, but that's the way it worked out. And then the Replacements were done. Westerberg went on to be a solo artist. Mars went out and was playing in different bands. Eventually, from 2012 to 2015, they got back together. Tommy was in Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, I'm sure
and quit Guns N' Roses to go back to the Replacements.
Give you a little window into that relationship then, because I'm sure that paycheck was nice, but the agita was not.
Well, John Freese, who is now the drummer in the Foo Fighters, had played with Tommy in Guns N' Roses.
Mm-hmm.
And when Mars wasn't going to be available to do it, they got him into the band to be the drummer, So Josh Freese, Replacements, Guns N' Roses, Foo Fighters, a couple others, he's a big time drummer of his generation. But the bottom line is, look, maybe you didn't know the Replacements. Maybe you were way into them. They're not a huge band, but they're a very important band in the alternative music history, which is an important history, especially in the 80s in the U.S.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about a coming of age record, I would be hard pressed to find another one that's as good as this.
I agree. And Tim the next year was building. It was even better. Maybe it was at least as good. I feel like the songs were better. I feel like, and the band was moving in the good, positive direction. So yeah, maybe that's a little preview for what to expect in 2025 from the Wolf in action. Well, we went down some interesting rabbit holes there, didn't we, on Let It Be by the Replacements. Turning 40 here. A band that shouldn't be overlooked. A band that shouldn't be forgotten. Of course, Paul Westerberg went on to do more things as a solo artist. And of course, eventually they got back together in the 2000s, as all bands eventually do. But this was an important album for them because they weren't just a punk band, or weren't trying to just be a punk band anymore. They're doing things that are more personal. They're doing songs that are more melodic. Paul Westerberg is leading the way, and not every album we review are going to be multi-platinum sensations, right? We like rock and roll of all genres, and some we liked at the time, or some maybe we get to learn about later. And that's what we're trying to do with our show, is not only talk about the stuff that we've loved for decades, but also talk about those kind of rare gems that maybe were outside of the public eye, but are really good rock and roll and help move the genre forward. And we may have delved into some topics we don't usually delve into here on The Wolf, but it's just interesting to see how some of those topics were seen or talked about years ago and how they're seen or talked about now. And music has always been a great way to get these things out in the open and get people talking, get people to know one another and accept each other. And punk, I think, is about accepting people who are outsiders for whatever reason. It's not just folks who have tough home lives. It's people who are dealing with stuff that are on the fringes of what they call civilized society or quote-unquote normal society. And punk has always been a refuge for those folks. I think the Replacements hit on a lot of that stuff here with Let It Be. Some really good songs on here. And if you didn't know it, well, I hope you liked it, and maybe you'll go out and explore a little bit more about the Replacements in the future. We want to know, folks, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Did we leave out your favorite part? You gotta let us know. Email us. It's uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. You can let us know the bands, the albums, the concerts, the DVDs, the books, the rock properties you want to hear us talk about here on the show. And we really need you to download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Doesn't matter where. Just make sure you subscribe and download, as those downloads are the lifeblood of growing the show, as are 5-star reviews. So if you're thinking about it, folks, hey, please go out and give us a positive review. It means the world to us. It helps us find more rock and rollers like you. And if you send it our way, we might just read it on an episode. Thanks as always to Pantheon Podcast for making us part of the family. And thank you to our sponsor, rarevinyl.com, where if you go and use the code UGLY at checkout, you can save 10% off one entire order. Hard to believe, folks, but next week is our 200th episode, and we couldn't have done it without you. We appreciate all of our listeners, old and new, and we do have a special guest lined up that we're very, very excited about. Someone who Jackson and I have been talking about getting on the show for a long time, and I think that you're going to like it. So make sure you stay tuned till next week. And until next time, to all you rockers all around the world, be cool and keep doing what you do to keep rock alive.